How have you been working with Alan?
This will be my third year now.
And that's boy, you talk about somebody who knows. You know, you've got a client who knows.
Oh yes, absolutely.
You know,
absolutely.
Was there a challenge coming into that? You know, kind of knowing, I mean, his history and what he's done.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would be lying if I said I wasn't nervous on my very first show, and we didn't have a rehearsal. But
towers, just the towers.
Again, I'd spent a couple of weeks going over the material. I didn't have a turntable at the time, but I did have most of the discography on CD.
Right.
So his wife sent me a set list, oddly enough, 22 songs, and I went looking down and I go, know it, know it, know it, know it, know it, know it, know it. Oh, what's that? Know it, know it, know it. I think there were 3 tracks that I wasn't familiar with from later discography. But I dumped the tracks in order of the set into my iTunes and just started listening to the tracks again in my can, so I could form, you know, not only the sounds and the mixes, because Alan, of course, does have a very signature sound in his producing style with over his discography of solo stuff. It's instantly recognizable. And again, I think my job is it's incumbent upon me to try and reproduce that as accurately as possible, right down to the vocal blends, right down to, you know, little inflective, you know, effects here and there, of which there isn't a great deal, but they're all important because a lot of Alan's audience, quite frankly, are hi-fi buffs.
They are,
and
yes.
I noticed on my very first show that I did, there were people that made comments after the show, most of which were good, and one fella came up to me and said, "What happened to that keyboard part at the top of, you know," and I probably had missed it, to be honest, you know what I mean? So I'm not going to lie. But again, you know, that doesn't, of course, happen necessarily with everyone's music. But Alan, you know, does have a very...
He's got that fan base.
His fan base is, his listening audience is a little more discriminating than your... And again, a lot of them are our generation and older, so they remember what hi-fi sounds like, you know, a needle or Rust and Magnets.
When you're not doing Alan, I know one of the other big clients is Big and Rich and John Rich, and they're really kind of diametrically opposed stylistically. But I don't. Does it change your approach?
Not really. Again, it boils down to the same thing, knowing the material. And I've been mixing Big and Rich for 8 years now, since 2004, and I was lucky enough to join on right when they made their first big debut with Save a Horse Ride a Cowboy, and we were, of course, on a major country tour as the main support act.
Right.
So I was lucky to get on board from, you know, from the get-go, and they too have had a very consistent, good band, you know, over the years.
Big part of it.
And their show is, quite frankly, I've heard interesting comments from industry professionals amongst ourselves at front of house behind me over the years, differing, you know, opinions on, well, I guess that's what they call it music these days, but I look at it, depending on what I'm doing you have to look at it in different ways in the bigger picture, and that is the entertainment value to the audience, the ticket buying audience who are really paying our wages ultimately, as well as our, you know, our employers. And with Big and Rich, they're used to seeing a circus, a sideshow with lots of lights and pyro. Technics for many years. We had a big rock and roll set with elevators, and they like their music loud. And I'm not necessarily a big fan of loud, but I think it's a bit more of a challenge and a skill set to make something that is acoustically loud sound pleasing still to the ear without making people want to cover their ears or leave at the front, you know. Which of course is a skill set as well. And I'm going to touch on another thing here too in relation to that. Although I don't consider myself a system tech anymore for many years, I've really made it my business to take most of the major courses, Meyer Sim, Smart training, and I do use Smart. And the reason I've done that is because on so many different levels of touring, when you're not traveling with your complete own production, i.e. racks and stacks, you're really at the mercy of production of the day, which can vary drastically from place to place. And I very quickly found out with a basic skill set of knowledge, more than enough to be dangerous, you really have at your disposal how to make correct decisions to maximize what you have to work with, or make corrections that are incorrect in a sound system. Because at the end of the day, my employer's still paying me to do, a job, and even though I've got my own console and I don't have my PA, I'm still expected to provide a certain level of continuity on a daily basis, no matter what the rig is. And if you have a certain basic skill set in understanding how loudspeakers work, different types of systems, manufacturers, basics, you can really optimize more easily than perhaps somebody who doesn't.